The fight for our freedom will take hard work, but like I always say, we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work can be joyful work. And the fight for our country is always worth it. It is always worth it.
That was Kamala Harris making a concession speech after calling and conceding the election, calling Donald Trump. That would have been Thursday midday. She did not make herself available the night of the election. Pardon me, that would have been Wednesday, obviously mid-Wednesday, but it was Tuesday night. I think that supporters were hoping to hear from her. She didn't make herself available.
No.
Maybe to a certain degree, some of the election results were still up in the air, but for the most part, everybody knew what was happening. I think everybody knew early. We were talking about how the Democratic communication had kind of gone silent. Their Twitter account had gone dark. There weren't a lot of posts. There wasn't a lot happening.
Was
the map was just red,
non-existent.
and so she steps in front of cameras and supporters on Wednesday and basically does her best to rally the troops, encourage everybody, like Jared Yates Sexton did on our Wednesday episode and our November 6th episode, which you have to check out.
Interview.
Thought that was an awesome interview. He said, listen, you got to get up. If you feel like giving up, you can't. He says you got to lick your wounds and get back to work. And that was kind of the gist of what Kamala Harris had to say yesterday. Really interesting conversation prompted by some of the voices that we talked to, a few different political scientists. If you missed it, from Mount Royal University, University of Calgary, Athabasca University, we talked to Jared Yates Sexton, a podcaster, an author, and a political commentator out of the U.S., and then I thought Bruce Heyman nailed it as well.
Oh, yeah.
Former U.S. ambassador to Canada, talking about what the election means for Ukrainians, for Palestinians, for Iranians, for Americans and Canadians, of course. So some really great takes there. We had talked to Quick Dick McDick, the Saskatchewan-based YouTuber, a conservative, the day before the election, and we talked to him specifically about Trump and tariffs.
Yeah.
And he basically said, Trump's kind of spelled it out, that it's going to make business more expensive for Canadian producers, including ag producers, could have implications for folks working in oil and gas. And I want to just shout out everybody that was contributing to the conversation online, leaving comments on our TikTok and our Instagram reels, on our tweets as well. There was one that jumped out at me from Cameron, and I appreciated Cameron chiming in, works in the industry, and he shot us this tweet. We can throw it up on the screen, and I'll kind of read it out for everybody that's listening on the podcast right now. But Cameron's not 100% sure that Trump is going to hurt producers in Canada, and he had some kindred spirits that were chiming in as well, that were there with us. He says, listen, I'm happy with the outcome in the U.S. He says, and I'm an Alberta beef producer. He says, when it comes to trade, Harper went after Democrat California wine. He says Biden canceled Keystone. He says, I predict that Trump will primarily target liberal-friendly business. He says supply management. He's talking about dairy, obviously, and says stuff like that. He says, most common sense U.S. beef producers see the benefits of our livestock trade and that it's structured, to benefit both countries. And so there's a beef producer out of Alberta that says he's not too concerned about it. I appreciated Cameron chiming in. Now, you can obviously read some of the replies if you check out and follow us on Twitter at RealTalkRJ. A lot of people are saying, well, you may not realize you're going to get hurt by this, but you probably are going to get hurt. Maybe there'll be a moment of reckoning. Who knows? Time will tell. It's going to be fascinating, I think, to see what the second Trump presidency is going to look like as opposed to the first. This one where he won't be seeking re-election, we think. He won't be seeking re-election. And based on kind of how the House, the Senate's playing out, the Supreme Court, people are going to be saying that he's probably going to be and will most likely act like the most powerful president in American history.
Well, he will be. And I mean, if Trump supporters and people who voted for him wanted a full-on, hands-on decks, 100% power in their party, that's what they're going to get. So there's going to be no excuses this time. If things go sour and you control the House, you control the Senate, you've got your guy in the White House, there's not really anyone else you can blame, right? And I'm not saying, I'm getting so many texts today from people and yesterday. Keystone XL is back, all these texts, right? And I'm like, you know what? I hope all these things come to fruition. I hope you get all the things you want. And I don't wish for things to go horribly. I don't want anyone on any side of the political spectrum to have a shittier life because of Trump's election. But at the same time, like I said, if things go south here, there's going to be no one to blame except yourself. Right?
Yeah. Now, there's a million different angles that these conversations can be had from as well, right? Like, we talk about, I want to point out a couple of interesting sort of like financial stories, some market stories that people are following, but there's other folks that are going, areas of our life that are going to be impacted. These people, their perspective has nothing to do with the economy. It might have nothing to do with tariffs or trade. 100%. It may have to do, with what they're forecasting on gun control or Trump's promise around mass deportations or what have you. Pretty interesting timing, though, today, as the Federal Reserve is expected to make, we're speaking to you ahead of an announcement, but they're expected to cut rates. And experts, including Alicia Wallace, Elizabeth Buchwald, and Brian Mina with CNN, are saying that the timing on this is extremely awkward. They say as the U.S. economy faces a new direction, a new president, a 3-year battle to bring down high prices by hiking rates to cool the economy. Sound familiar, Canadians? The Federal Reserve last month finally rolled out a rate cut, a pretty big one, and they're expecting another one today, but the future path of the U.S. economy is now coming into question, given the policies that have been touted by President-elect Trump. And so Jerome Powell, who's the chair of the Federal Reserve, is likely going to face a lot of questions on what that's going to mean for the central bank and inflation and borrowing rates. U.S. stocks opened with a small gain today, just hours before we're talking to you, ahead of this key policy announcement, and a monster rally yesterday prompted by Trump's return to the White House, including the U.S. dollar, treasury yields, and Bitcoin. I don't know if you saw this story. Did you see this? CNN reporting. Check this out. I was reading this before we started doing the show here. The world's 10 richest people gained $64 billion in net worth.
Well, of course they
after
did.
Trump's reelection, just based on markets.
Yeah.
Just like unbelievable. Wednesday, a good day for the richest on planet Earth. Elon Musk, surprise, surprise, the biggest gainer, the world's richest person. Maybe Trump's biggest supporter.
Well, I was hearing this morning that he's gonna carve out a position for him in a new branch of government. That's what they said yesterday.
They should put him in charge of Space Force.
Well, like the Trump team is all setting up. We saw in West Palm Beach, and they're going over how they're going to transition. But one of the things that came out yesterday is that Elon will be, I don't know if he'll be in the White House, but he will be running some sort of new branch of government to do with efficiency. That's the only word they put out there.
I wonder how folks feel, those that would want Elon. Like if you're a Tesla shareholder, do you feel positive or negative about him focusing less of his attention on that?
Yeah,
if you're invested in SpaceX, or if SpaceX is your jam, would you rather Starlink or like all of these things? I mean,
he's got a lot on his plate now. There's no denying that.
No kidding. So he gains. They say his wealth jumped. Elon's did $26.5 billion yesterday.
I know, and I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but this is the playbook of the right. And Bernie Sanders, when he was running or trying to run, he brought this all up when he visited schools across North America and talked to students, and he said, "Hey, listen, I don't care if people have differing opinions, but you have to watch the playbook. The Republicans tend to do this and this is what is happening literally days after the election. They divide. They put blacks against whites, men against women. They put up things like abortion rights and religion and all these other things to kind of, make you look over here while they're giving tax cuts to the people who already have too much money in the first place." And I'm all about business. I'm all about working hard and from the ground up. And I think Elon has built everything himself. He's a smart guy. But at the same time, do these guys need more tax breaks? Do they need more? Does Jeff Bezos need more money?
Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder, his wealth grew $7.1 billion.
More money than anyone will ever need.
Can you imagine your wealth growing $7.1 billion? I can't imagine having. Anyway, so a week after defending his decision to withhold, he owns the Washington Post, of course, to withhold the endorsement of Kamala Harris. Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison supports Trump, saw his net worth rise $5.5 billion Wednesday. All the usual suspects, all the big names: Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Google founders, Berkshire Hathaway CEO Warren Buffett, obviously. None of them endorsed a candidate, but they have spoken in favor of Democratic candidates and causes in the past. I see Travis in the live chat right now saying, can we just get AOC to run for the love of God.
I don't know though.
To be honest with you, I think, and this is just my opinion. Yeah. I wonder if she would have fared more poorly than Harris. I wonder if she would have fared worse.
Division is the thing that we got to get rid of here. After Trump is done, and maybe things go great, but like I just said about, the Republicans kind of splitting people so that they can get their agenda pushed through in the White House. I think on the left, they have this whole thing about bringing people together, but I don't know if the Harris campaign hit that mark. There was a lot of division on her side as well. A lot of name calling people Nazis and racists and things like that. So I do agree that the temperature just has to come down.
Yeah.
On both sides, the division it's gotta be lowered.
Sylvia says markets have been roaring, and if there's no dampening, the results could be bad. Wise Kyle says he had an 8-point jump in his portfolio yesterday. He says one stock was up 18%. Sell, Kyle, sell. We've got others. Vamp Fashion says if we point out that Canada supplies 25% of America's daily usage, talking about oil and gas, I'm assuming, says at a discount, they don't need to spend $3 trillion a year to fight off nations that hate them. A tariff is not likely on our oil. A lot of Michael says there are so many conflicts of interest with Elon Musk being part of government. Listen,
big time.
There's a lot going on right now on the financial front, but for the Democrats, this is like Jared Yates Sexton says on the show yesterday, a time to lick their wounds. Here's more of what Vice President Kamala Harris had to say on Wednesday.
To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before.
So that's more from Kamala Harris. LT in the chat says, if you guys own any S&P 500, your wealth has gone up as well. Great point. By the way, Corey Hogan from The Strategist, we got into on what outperformed what over the past year or so. You should check it out. It's in our YouTube highlights on our YouTube channel, the S&P 500 versus Bitcoin. I thought it was a really interesting feature. Obviously, the S&P 500, way safer. And I would never tell you what to do if you hold Bitcoin right now, but I know a lot of people are selling high and they'll buy back in later when it inevitably drops. But a lot of things to follow. So we get this email from Lauren to talk@ryanjesperson.com. She says, I really enjoyed your Wednesday post-election show, especially Dr. Melanie Thomas from the University of Calgary. Really interesting research that she was citing. Lauren, I agree. She says, I didn't hold much hope for Ms. Harris because the Dems waited 2 years too long to replace Joe Biden. Says, plus a majority of voters don't want what they're offering. It's sad that they just don't seem to get that. Lauren says, as a progressive-leaning voter myself, I think much of the left has lost the plot. You can implement progressive policies, but you also have to competently deliver basic services. An example, she says, Alberta's two big cities, Calgary and Edmonton, elected progressive mayors whose number one priorities were declaring a climate emergency. Jody Gondek did that on Real Talk, and addressing systemic racism. Amarjeet Sohi in Edmonton. Lauren says, really? How are either of these things part of their mandate or helpful to their citizens who are experiencing huge tax increases and expecting services? You know, Edmonton City Council literally forgot how to plow the main streets for weeks during COVID. Transit's become so dangerous, I've stopped using it out of concern for my own safety. There's an awful lot of garbage all over downtown every day, in spite of the extra staff that supposedly has been hired to clean it up. I still can't go to my counselor's office in person because they still aren't open. That's preposterous, Lauren, if true. That probably has to do more with the City Hall shooting than anything else, she says. But that's more than 2.5 years after I had to go back to my office. She says, I could go on, but my point is that many progressive leaders have demonstrated an amazing ability to expand their mandates while simultaneously demonstrating almost zero ability to competently provide basic services that actually are their mandates. And until they can do that, I don't think they're going to be governing anything bigger than a large city for the foreseeable future, and maybe not even that. I'm not going to be voting for the people I've talked about during the next municipal election, and I know I'm not alone. That from Lauren, and she's probably not 100% wrong.
No.
And then there's this one from Rebecca.
Okay.
Here we go. Rebecca says, and she wants this to be submitted for the flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, coming up every Friday. I disagree. I think that it deserves more of a spotlight in the leadoff spot on the show. Yes. Okay. It fits. It would be great for the flamethrower. But I think you and I need to hash this out right now. Rebecca says, can we have some real talk about the hypocrisy, Jespo, that you and Johnny were spewing November 6th about, just wait, how poor form it was. Remember, I said this, how poor form you guys said it was for Vice President Harris to not come out and deliver a concession speech, earmuffs kids, after a grueling and fucking disappointing election. How disrespectful, Ryan, you thought that it was to her supporters and the bad optics of it. Mm-hmm. Because, Rebecca says, I clearly remember both of you supporting Connor McDavid in his refusal to go out on the ice and receive the Conn Smythe Trophy after losing in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. Right? She says, yakking both of you about how he deserves the time away with his teammates to deal with the loss. And you both fully supported his choice. And she's 100% correct.
You got us.
She says, so are you just not, and this is the part I don't prefer. She says, so are you just not supporting women making choices now? Is that the difference here? Does Kamala not deserve that time to deal with this great loss? Did she not work her ass off over the last 100 days? She did all these comparisons with the Oilers Cup run. Mm-hmm. She says she is literally shouldering the disappointment of half of a nation and a lot of the fucking world on top of that, says Rebecca. Supporting a man playing a game while shitting on a woman trying to change the world is bad optics. That from Rebecca out of Spruce Grove, Alberta.
I'm going to say, Rebecca, this happens on the show not often, but I'm going to say you got us. You got me. And that's not to say that I think it has to do with her being a woman. I don't think it's that. I think accepting an award at a sports event is a little different than coming out and conceding an election that is clearly over. But, man, we just played some clips from her concession speech, but what you didn't see was when she first walked up on stage, obviously roaring applause for many minutes, and when she started her speech, the emotion in her face. I mean, she had tears. This was a hard-fought race, and I think she, like all the other Democrat voters in the States and people who were watching this, thought there was a big wave of change coming, much like the Obama era. Maybe not. We didn't think it was going to be that big, but much like that, there was an air of hope, and you got us because
she 100%
I don't think they're exact comparisons, but you made a good argument.
She got us. Yeah, she got us. I will say this, and this may be a minor detail, because number one, the most important detail is, Rebecca, you got us, and you're 100% right. I already emailed her back, by the way, in like all caps. I never email in all caps. And I was like, this is such a good email. And by the way, who is it? Sylvia, someone says, give that girl a mug. 100%. We're going to send her a whole Real Talk prize back. 100%. Yeah. I would say, like, had it been Joe Biden that also came out or did not come out and didn't deliver a concession speech, I would have saved equal commentary. However, Rebecca approaches this from a perspective where maybe this is like landing with her in a way where she sees it all the time or sees it frequently. And so I just want to basically concede, you win. You got us. And that was a great email.
And thank you for doing that.
100%.
And we talked about this yesterday, but not about this email, but something else. Is just, and this is another thing why when I watch Joe Rogan, I'm like, or other podcasts, like things go off the rails. They don't go off the rails here, but like we talk every day for an hour and a half, Monday to Friday. There's bound to be things that we say that you're going to catch and come back at us. And I love when people do that.
100%.
This is going to make me think today when we get off air. I'm going to be like, maybe I need to rethink why I pose that on her and not on a man. Right?
I've been thinking about it since I read it. I love Tracy's in the chat just going mug. all right, we'll send her a mug. How about this from Peaches? Peaches says that first email, Lauren and I says we'd probably disagree on most things, but damn, she's right. Identity politics is pissing off a ton of people. That from Peaches.